Here with me now is Roberta Crissy. She's the chief of the Military Personnel Division for the Army Corps of Engineers. On 9/11, she was a lieutenant colonel in the Pentagon working for the Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel. Roberta, welcome.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Tell me about that day. How did it start? What were you doing?
Well, I arrived at the Pentagon that morning, and I ran into my boss, and he told me at that time that General Maud, our G1, had wanted to see me about a question. And I had told him that I would go over to see General Maud right after the meeting that our section was having. So we had our meeting, and then I guess the television was airing that the North Tower had been hit. And so I went over to my boss and I said, I'm going to go see General Maud to see what his questions are. And he had said, don't worry, I've already taken care of that. So we had a new employee. Her name was Karen Wagner, and I was her battle buddy and getting her trained up. And at that point in time, everyone was hunkered around the TV station, the TV, watching what was happening in New York.
And what were you thinking at the time? Were you thinking we're under attack, or there's just been an accident?
I had thought that it was just an accident at that point in time, and I am a workaholic, and I thought to myself, well, I really need to get back to my job, so I don't have time to be watching the TV. So what I did is I went back to my desk along with my battle buddy, Karen Wagner, and we were working. And at that point, our boss came in and said that the crisis action team, the CAT, had been activated. And he identified one of the people that we worked with to go down to the Army Activation Center and represent our section down there. And so I had indicated that I needed a document from that location that was classified, and I needed to get down there as well. So I was going with her. We left our cubicles and we went out of our office space, and at that moment the plane hit. Now, I didn't know it was a plane. I had thought it was a bomb, and because the ceiling was crashing in and the lights, it went dark. And so one of the soldiers said, hit the ground. So we got on the ground and waited for any further instruction. And then he said, okay, everyone evacuate. So we made our way through the darkness, finally out into the center courtyard there at the Pentagon, and we could look up and see the smoke in the section that we had just come from.
Now, at this time, you don't realize that there's a connection between what's happening in New York and this explosion, essentially, at the Pentagon.
No, I'm still thinking it was a bomb, and I had thought that the New York was an accident. But at that point in time, when we were out in the center courtyard of the Pentagon, someone started yelling, there's another plane coming, you get across the street past 395 and get further away from the Pentagon. So I'm still with the person I left with. Her name was Linda Herbert, and we moved through the parking lot over to the Doubletree Hotel at that point in time.
And when you turned back to look at the Pentagon, what did you see?
I saw billowing smoke. It was just so much smoke in the air at that point in time. And
what were your feelings at the time?
My feelings were something really bad has happened and life is not going to be the same going forward. I thought to myself, my wallet, my keys, my medical records, everything that I have is in where my office space was. And I thought, I don't have any idea what I'm going to do at this point in time. And also what I was looking for is my boss. I'm looking for accountability to identify, to see if I can find my boss and let him know I'm okay, because that's what we do in the military, is accountability. So but I never did see him that day. I never did see him.
And were you able to get home? What did you do after that?
Well, I was at the DoubleTree Hotel, and there was a long line, and I had to use a ladies' room. And I said, "Is this the line to the ladies' room?" And they're like, "No, this is the payphone." And I'm like, "Well, I don't have any money." So, but I ended up, they housed us there for several hours. The DoubleTree Hotel did, and eventually they brought in phones so that we could call our families and let them know that we were okay. So at that point in time, I called a friend and asked if they could come pick me up, which they did, and brought me home. But when I was going south on 395, it looked like a battle zone, because people were walking along the side of the road. Smoke was in the background coming out of the Pentagon, and it just looked horrendous.
Roberta, at what point did you find out that a lot of your coworkers, people in your office, didn't make it and were killed that day?
I found out the next day. When I got home, there were spouses of service members that I worked with. They were calling me at home, asking me if they had seen their husband, their wife, and I was really careful. I was like, "No, I haven't seen them, but it could be that they are just trying to make their way home now. They could be in the hospital. Don't panic." I was really concerned and didn't think that anyone in my section had been killed at that point in time.
And General Maude, who you were supposed to be in his office at that time,
I was.
He was killed.
He was killed. And I look at that as it wasn't my time, because I was headed over to see him, and I would have been in his office when the plane hit, and just so thankful that, that wasn't my time.
And had you been in your office, you probably would have been killed as well.
Yes, all of the file cabinets had tumbled over when the plane came in. It blocked the doors where people couldn't get out of the space that they were in. They were suffocated by the smoke inhalation, primarily, is my understanding.
And in the days and the weeks that followed, you were in an alternate location. How were you feeling at that time?
Well, there were two things that I think about in the days that followed. We were over in Alexandria for 3.5 months after, because our office didn't exist anymore. We were dealing with families and their funerals for their loved ones that had died in our section, and then also our mission. We were doing policy and promotion and selection boards, and that continued on. So we had a major mission with those two areas.
Is the anniversary very emotional for you?
It is. It makes me think of the heroes that day. My boss, Carl Knobloch, he was tremendous. We lost some great Americans that day. Karen Wagner, Bill Ruth, Kip Taylor, so many people that we lost that day. And it's very, very, it's very hard to reflect that, because it seems like just yesterday in many, many ways.
Roberta, thanks so much for coming in and sharing that story for us.
Thank you very much for having me.